Hey YouTube, if YouTube's algorithm has brought you here because you're looking for information on SUV camping, power sources, power stations, solar power, car camping, that kind of thing, welcome. Normally my channel has to do with camping in the 1920s and the 1930s and the history of camping gear. I do these big steel tent videos because as a means of being able to film, to video that stuff, I have outfitted my 2002 4Runner as an adventure vehicle and a kind of a mobile video production facility. What this does is it enables me to shoot video in the field and then edit it while I am there. And that way, if I need to reshoot any kind of scene or make any additions, I can do it on the spot rather than doing it here in the cabin. Now, my power needs in that case are maybe a little bit different from yours, but they are kind of the same, okay? In that most of my power draw comes from using my laptop. And in these days, we're all going to be using our laptop. I might use mine a little bit more than you do. And if you're interested, you can go to the playlist, the Big Steel Tent playlist, and that gives you all the information on the solar and the power and everything else I've got going on with the Big Steel Tent, which is what I call my truck. Now, my last trip to the field to shoot video, it was a pretty long one. I shot a lot of video, had to edit a lot of video, and I went to my favorite camp spot in the Sam Houston National Forest. But I made a discovery. Let's hear what it is. Okay, well, it's been a long day for the Big Steel Tent. And I have just now reached a determination that I can no longer camp in my favorite campground if I'm going to be shooting a lot of video. The reason? I got too much overhead cover. I got pretty much zero solar input. And I've been acting like I was going to get it. The Starlink has been on all day on the backup power. I'm down to 14% on that. I have been editing video all day on the Delta. I'm down to about 20% there. Okay. I've spent 50 years as a drafting technician in the structural steel industry. And one of the things we learn in the engineering professions is to define the problem before you try to solve the problem. Our problem is that we have too much overhead cover to receive enough solar input to be able to use the laptop on a long-term basis, to use it intensively. Okay. Several possible solutions therefore present ourselves. One is to park in the sunlight. The other is to maximize your solar input. Get as much solar as you possibly can. And the third is to reduce your power usage or to reduce the amount of power you need to do the tasks that you want to accomplish. Have I made any sense? I sure hope so. Made sense to me. Okay, as far as parking in the sunlight, I know a place where I can do that all the time, but I travel. I am not always guaranteed a good place in the sunlight. Therefore, I need to be able to employ one or both of the other two solutions. Okay? I already have on hand over 1,000 watts of solar power that I can use depending on the situation. If I'm going to go out for 5 or 6 days, I want more solar power because I want my power station to last. Therefore, I want more power to go into it. Okay, so that solution is available to me. What I was looking at was, okay, how do I reduce the power usage of the laptop other than just shutting it off and walking away? I did some reasoning. I'm not an electrician, okay? Structural drafting technician, okay? I did some reasoning and said, okay, I have a cooler where if I plug it into my 12-volt output, it will last like 7 days if I don't run anything else on my power station. Okay, if I plug it into the 120, because I've got 2 cords, I've got that option. If I plug it into the regular house current, it'll only last about 2 days. Okay, so okay, well, how would I be able to do that with my laptop? And I said, when I started this journey of mine of using electricity in the field, I bought this thing. Okay, it's a 130 watt inverter. It costs about $50. And it's a nifty little tool. I just don't need it anymore. Okay, it plugs into your dashboard, and while your engine is running, it generates house current, 130 watts. Okay, now that's not enough to run something with a heat source. Okay, but it will run the laptop, and it will charge your battery, your devices, your phone, and the camera and stuff like that. You just got to have the car running while you're doing it. And I said, okay, well, let me see if using this thing, because it's plugged into the 12 volt, will reduce the power usage of the laptop. Okay. Now, before I was able to test that concept, I had to go on a trip from my classic camping video and the whole classic camping 1920s, 1930s thing. Had to do a trip to Ohio and in the big steel tent. And I had a kind of a miniature disaster in that the first night I stopped, and at this point I'm like 350 miles away from home. I get everything laid out. I'm at a KOA, and I'm happy as a clam because I've got electricity from the KOA. I can just plug everything in. And then I found out that I had left the power supply from my laptop at home. As soon as I realized it wasn't in the laptop case, I knew exactly where it was. But I needed that laptop because I was going to be shooting video on this trip. Going to be shooting a lot of it. And the next day I went to Walmart and bought this thing. Okay. This is $20, okay, at Walmart, and it's kind of like a universal power supply. I took it back to the truck, I plugged it in, and found out, and this gave me a clue. I found out this will not provide enough power to boot the laptop. If I try to boot the laptop with this thing plugged in, it tells me I can't boot the laptop. It takes 600 watts and this will only deliver X amount. Okay. But I realized that the laptop will boot off of its own battery. So if I boot it using the battery and then plug this in, I can run the laptop. So that solved that problem. But now, when I get home and I'm trying to figure out whether or not or how to reduce the power usage of the laptop, I said, well, let's test this along with this, okay, to see which one, if either of them, will reduce the power usage of the laptop. Okay? So that's what these tests that you're about to see are all about. Okay, this is the app for the EcoFlow. It says if I leave it the way it is right now, it'll last 42 hours and 27 minutes. This indication right here, that is 30 watts input coming in from the solar, and that's repeated over here. The number we're going to be looking at is this one up here, output. Okay, we're going to see how much is drawn by whatever it is we hook up by looking at the output. So the first test we're going to conduct is hooking the laptop up normally using the factory provided power supply. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to plug in the computer. We're going to boot it up. It is plugged in and ready to go. I'm going to boot it up and we'll see how much that jumps from 0 to whatever. Laptop is open. Already it's outputting 30, 64 watts, 141 watts, 147, down to 78, 155 watts, and I believe we are on, yes, it is fully booted up and we are pulling 78 watts. Depending on what we're doing, what we hook up to it, it varies from 62. Okay, so it's pulling that much power, somewhere around 50 to 100. When that's up to 139, we can average it out at about 100 watts. Okay, that's our baseline. That's using the laptop normally, using the normal power supply, turning it on and running it. Okay. What we learned there is that I've got some pretty high numbers, although the power fluctuates up and down because the computer's doing different things internally. The highest number we saw there was 168 watts. I believe the lowest was in like 30, 40 watts, something like that. Okay, that is our baseline. Now, let's plug this thing in to the 12 volt and see if we see any reduction in those numbers. Okay, we have plugged in the 12 volt adapter, and into that we have plugged in our 130 watt inverter, and right now it's reading, both of the power sources are plugged into the inverter but not to the computer. Okay, and right now we're reading a 5 to 20 watt output just to keep the inverter running. So let us boot up the computer. And I hope this stays on. And now we're pulling 63 watts. and the computer is booted, and we're putting out between 21 and 109 watts using the factory power supply. Okay, we did see minor power reduction in the boot of the computer, in the booting process, about 12, 10 watts, something like that, and minimal reduction in power for usage after the boot is complete. Okay, but still, saving power is saving power. Okay, the problem is that even if I shut the computer off, that inverter is still pulling power. Now it's only 2 to 4, but I think it spikes at like 20 watts for brief instances, but it is still drawing power. That's not optimum. I would have to unplug it and shut the computer off in order to keep it from drawing that power. Now let's see what the Walmart dingus does. Okay, the factory supply is off. We are seeing 0 output, and now we can run the computer because it doesn't need power to boot. And now we're outputting about 96 watts using the Walmart power supply. Okay, I don't show it in the video, but the first thing we learned when we plugged in that Walmart power supply is it doesn't provide enough power to boot the laptop. Okay, and you may notice in the previous little tests that we were pulling 160, 170 watts in order to get the laptop booted up so that it can run in normal operation. That Walmart power supply doesn't provide enough power to do that. Okay, but it does provide enough power to run the computer. It will charge the battery. And the solution to that, of course, is to don't plug the power supply in until the laptop is booted off its own battery. Just, open up the laptop, let it boot up, then plug in the power supply. But the other thing we've learned is that we're not seeing any real reduction in the amount of power that the computer is using. It's still around 100 watts. What happens if we plug them both in? The 12 volt plug into the 130 watt inverter and then plugged into the Walmart power supply and then plug that into the laptop. Let's see what that does. Let's unplug that. And now we're going to plug in the Walmart power source. And that is plugged in, and we're still pulling about 100 watts. Okay, we had seen minimal reduction in power usage. Okay, couple watts. Still saving power, right. But we still have the problem of needing to unplug that inverter when the computer's not being used. And we've got more crap to pack. I've come to the determination, number one, we cannot practically reduce the power usage of our laptops. Okay, laptop, no matter what you do, it's going to pull around 100 watts. It's going to vary from 20 up to 109, but going to average out, it's going to pull 100 watts every minute that you've got it on. Okay. The solution is power management. Make sure you shut the ding dang thing off. make sure you use it minimal. To add solar input, have as much solar input as you can, so that when you do use the computer, maybe you get more solar in than you're using in the laptop. And the other is to park in the sunshine, make your own shade. Okay? So I wish there was a better solution. Doesn't appear to be. But the thing I have gained is I'm going to keep that Walmart power supply in the truck. That way, I'll always have a power supply. Okay, so we have seen some benefit out of this. We've also learned that we can't make electricity do what we want it to. We'll see you down the trail.